How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another Student Gov Uncut. I'm really excited to be making this video because after weeks and a little over a month, almost 2 months of sending out resumes, going through interviews, getting rejections, having to submit my portfolio, and doing all sorts of things during this job search, I'm happy to report that I received an email this morning with a job offer. And I was so excited to have received it. It's going to be a full-time job, benefits, the whole nine, and I'll be doing 60% of it from home. And I'll just be going into the office in Carlsbad a couple of days a week. So I just shared the news with my family. We're all very excited. I'm very excited to have found a job after graduation. And I know many of you are searching for either jobs or internships or maybe even a volunteer opportunity that's quite competitive. So I wanted to make this video to share my experience and also to act as a sort of a different point of view from the conversation that I had a few weeks back with Gabriel Douglas. He was speaking from the point of view of a recruiter and also as a former student leader himself. He shared some insights on how you can best prepare your resume for the job market or for the job search. And I understand things are really tough right now with COVID and lockdowns and everything that's going on. So if I was able to find a job during these conditions, I want to make sure that I pass on everything I can to anyone who's watching, whether you are a Southwestern College student or you're a student at Palomar or Grossmont or City or any other college in the region or in the state. So I want to start off with just saying a couple things. The job that I received was in the private sector. So a lot of the advice that I'm about to share with you would apply if you are applying for a private sector job. And I know many students who are in student government, they want to apply for a government internship as maybe a political aide or a campaign manager or something like that. That's all fine and good. I just wanted to start off right off the bat with that so you understand that if you are applying for a public sector job, in other words, if you're going to be applying for the government, if you're going to be doing an internship or you want to get a job in City Hall or something like that, it's going to require a different set of skills. And I do think that the things you learn specifically, the technical skills, so to speak, that you learn in student government, such as Brown Act, parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules, that's going to apply more to the public sector than the private one. So that being said, just to start it off the bat, I had to apply my resume a little bit differently, and actually, I have it pulled up right here, so I can go down the list. I won't share the whole thing. I just wanted to give you some advice. So, right now, since I was talking about the difference between the public and the private sector, here's my first piece of advice for anyone who's applying for a private sector job. If that is the case, include your student government experience under volunteer work, because that is essentially what you're doing, and you're not getting paid for it. Now, I understand some of you might be student trustees or presidents. What you're receiving is not an hourly wage or a salary, but rather a stipend. And it is coming from the district most of the time. It depends on your school and how things work there. But I personally, that was the one thing I did. I actually got several roles. But one of the biggest role that I had was being communications officer for Region 10. And I included that under volunteer experience, not professional experience. If you include that type of experience under professional experience, most employers can see right through that. Most HR managers can look at that and say, oh, okay, I see what this is, right? You didn't get paid to do this, but you're trying to, like, what are you trying to pull? Are you trying to make it seem like this was an actual job when really it was just an activity, a student activity? So don't do that. HR managers don't take kindly to it. Potential employers don't take kindly to it. And don't be embarrassed if that's the case. Think of it as a good segue, but be very clear and honest. That would be my first piece of advice there. Second piece of advice is, and I have received some emails on this one. Should you include your student government experience as a bullet point or as an actual item? And I really think it depends on whether you actually got anything done. So, for example, I'm proud to say I actually got a lot done while I was communications officer of Region 10. So I actually included the title, the organization, how long I did it, and then I included like 2 or 3 bullet points of the things that I accomplished. So Looking at my resume now, I put things like, I published newsletters and press releases. I wrote and produced YouTube videos. I chaired the communications committee, which is really just part of the job. But then I also included things like I increased our weekly Instagram reach by 84% in the first 10 weeks. And I'll talk a little bit more about how you should word things like this. But if you actually accomplish something, definitely include it as an item under volunteer work. If you really just did it and you didn't have any leadership role in there, it was just something that you just showed up and did, that's fine. I would include it as a bullet point. So there were some things that I did, but I wasn't a high achiever in that. So for instance, I was a graphic designer for The Sun. I was an editor-in-chief or head designer or anything like that. So under my schoolwork, I just put, student activities included school newspaper. That was it. So nothing too extraordinary, just making it seem like, oh yeah, and I did this other thing. Employers will appreciate it because they'll understand that you want to highlight your biggest accomplishments. And then another piece of advice is, like I mentioned before, you want to include results. I notice, and some of you have already sent me some resumes telling me like, what do you think? How does this look? And perhaps some of you have reached out to Gabriel, but I've seen so many resumes where someone will put that, oh, I was a senator at large for the ASO, and when asked, okay, what did you do? Well, I was part of the activities committee, and I attended a retreat, and I voted on resolutions. That's all fine and good, but it doesn't show the employer that you actually went above and beyond, that you did something extraordinary, that you pushed the limits, that you were disruptive, and you challenged the status quo, and you weren't afraid to be creative and innovative. So I wouldn't include that experience if it was just something you did where you just showed up, but do include it if you did something awesome. Like if you included, if for instance, just an example, if you were part of PTK and you started an event that hadn't been done before, if you somehow got a famous rock band to play or something like that, those are really big accomplishments, and your employer is going to want to see that. But if you didn't do that, I wouldn't include it. And the big things you want to include in your accomplishments, 3 things. You want to include what you did, how you did it, and how long it took you. So right now, using my example here, and this is not to humble brag or anything, just to use as an example, I included, what I did, which was increase the reach by 84%. I included how long it took me, so within my first 10 weeks, and then I included how. So I used a content calendar that I updated on a monthly basis. So that is really going to let your employer know that you are a person with a plan, and that just like you were able to do it for that organization, you can do it for theirs. As far as things you should and shouldn't include on a resume, or at least some of the things that I did, again, people are going to have different views on this. I'm not saying that you can't get away with it any other way. This is just my point of view. There are a few things I think that you should include, and others that you probably should just leave out, because your employer has a very limited amount of time to look at your resume. So you want to be able to capture them right away. So let's go over the things you should not include, or that I didn't include, and I don't think you should either. And I actually did include it in some of my resumes, and I found that I didn't have as much success. So this is I have research to show that, or at least my own personal experience, it didn't work as much. Number one, on the thing you shouldn't include is do not include club memberships. And this is important if you didn't have a leadership role in them. If you had a role like secretary or treasurer, in any position where you didn't lead the organization, then I would be very careful, because your employer doesn't really know what that means. Well, what did you do as treasurer? Now, if you did something extraordinary, like you raised $1 million for your club as treasurer, of course, absolutely include that. But if you were just a member, if you were a member of the art club or the anthropology club or whatever club, don't include it. You're just taking up space. It's great that you were a part of that club, and that's awesome, but what that tells your employer is that you show up, and that's really all you do. So I wouldn't include any club memberships if you didn't do anything really, really big in those. Another thing that I did not include are interests. Now, we all have different types of interests. Some of us have interest in politics, or interest in art, or interest in different areas, and that's fantastic. But it doesn't tell your employer what you can do for the organization. when an employer takes you on, they're going to spend a lot of money on your salary, on, Social Security and healthcare, and you become a liability to the company if you don't do the job. However, if you can show that you're going to be worth your weight in gold because, you're a worthy investment because you're able to accomplish something, they'll be more likely to consider you. So interest doesn't really tell them if you're a worthy investment. It lets them know you're a human being, right? Now, if you have, and I will talk about how you can incorporate interest if you did do something really incredible within them. So hold on, I will get to that. But if you just have a general interest in music and you really don't have much to share other than you just like music, I would not put that on a resume. The third thing, and this goes in the same kind of frame of mind, what I wrote down was participation trophies. Many people put this down if they went on a retreat and they got a certificate that says like, thank you for joining us. This is just like a participation thing. If you attended a workshop, if you took part in a 1-day event and they give you like a little certificate at the end, I wouldn't include that. That's not a certification. That's not a license. It's mainly just sort of a token of appreciation, just thanking you for showing up. Don't get me wrong, it's great and it's nice that people, reached out to you and gave you that. But as far as an employer, they're not really going to take much of that. It's just, okay, you attended an event and you got some growth out of it. That just means that you're staying current on the trends. That's something you should be doing anyway, at least for most employers, or at least the ones I interacted with. So I wouldn't include that if it's just something you did, like a participation trophy. I wouldn't include that. And then lastly, I would not include committees. So this goes specifically for the ASO crowd. Many of you were part of ASO committees. Some of you were part of college standing committees. Maybe you were part of the budget committee or the honors committee. There's so many different committees. I would not include a membership in any committee unless you were the vice chair or the chair, or you had some position of leadership within it. Because again, that just means that you showed up. It doesn't mean that you went above and beyond. All you did was show up. And then as far as things to include, the number one thing I would say you have to include is scholarships. This is big. And don't be shy to put out there how much money you won, because that tells your employer that you were able to put together results that were good enough for someone else to give you money. It's almost like a little mini job. So what I put on my resume was I put that I won a certain number of awards. I put the dollar amount so that my employer knows that I'm able to bring money into an organization. So if you have scholarships, include them. Another thing, if you want any awards, so MVP of a particular sport, or if most improved, or whatever the case may be, anything that says best, you want to include that too, because that's not a participation trophy. That is you being number one among many others, and that lets your employer know you'll go above and beyond. Include your GPA only if it's high. I would say 3.2 or above is good. Some would say 3.5 or above, meaning if you graduated with honors, you should put that. My GPA was 3.57 when I graduated, so I included that in saying, oh, I'm an honors student. Technically, I would be. But if your GPA was really nothing to write home about, I wouldn't include it. Another thing I would include are any coursework that you took that included business-related classes. So you don't want to put that you took Shakespearean literature, right? Or that's weird because Shakespeare didn't write books. But you don't want to put that you maybe took like a volleyball class, unless you're applying to be a volleyball coach. But if you took any graphic design courses, if you took any project management courses, if you took any programming courses, like HTML or CSS or Java or any of those, and you know a thing or two about coding or computer programming, those you should include. So if that's what you did, if it's something that will apply to a job, I would include it. And then let's see. And that's really it. I wanted to include 404. I just to close this video out, I wanted to give all of you 5 tips for the things, if that I want anybody to know who's currently in student government. They're not thinking about this right now. I want to give you some advice, because I think the sooner you do this, the better. And if you are already done with student government, I can just say it's not too late. You can still do this. But if you're just getting started, with student government, now is the time to do this. And trust me, I promise you, this will open up so many doors when you leave student government and you start applying for jobs. The first tip I would give anybody is, if you're in student government or you're getting close to graduation, try to get at least one certification, just one certification before you graduate. It could be anything. It could be Google Analytics certification. That's what I got. You can have a Google Ads certification. And there's all sorts of certifications. I know there's HubSpot certifications, and many of them are free. So I'll give you an example with the Google Analytics certification. You go through a list of courses available on Google. They're all free. You can take the test. There are certain stipulations to taking the test, but it's free to take. So it's just a free certification that you earn, and you can actually put that on a resume, and it lets your employers know that you have skills in an area you can bring to the business. So make a goal to get at least one certification before you graduate. The second thing I would include is try, if you can, present something. So I was able to present a workshop at a retreat, and that shows leadership experience. That shows that I'm able to put something together. But it also, you can upload it on YouTube. I'll be uploading my presentation pretty soon. And it lets your employer know that you can teach others. And that is a really important leadership skill. So if possible, whether you present something to your club, or you present something to the ASO, or you present something to a group of people anywhere, don't be afraid to reach out. It can be on anything as long as it serves the organization, and it's really going to make you look good on your resume. The third thing I would include is to have a passion project. My passion project was, it was actually 2 full-length novels that I wrote over the course of the last few years. So I put that as a passion project, but it could be anything for you. If you want to design a website, maybe if you want to write a book, or if you, maybe you are a lead guitarist in a band and your goal is to get a demo or something like that. Those are all passion projects, meaning they don't really, do much for your professional experience, but it lets employers know that even when you're having fun, you're out there achieving things. So pick a passion project. Don't be afraid to just go big with it and really impress people around you. And number 4, I would say, is take advantage of your time in college to learn applicable skills. So I mentioned before that you can take a programming class or a graphic design class. Don't be afraid to take those courses. This also goes for any foreign language classes. If you're not fluent in Spanish, take a couple of Spanish classes in college, and you can put fluent in Spanish or professional proficiency in Spanish or what have you on the resume. If you're already fluent in Spanish, you can pick any other language. But use your time in college to learn a new skill, whether that's computer programming or graphic design or project management or anything like that. And then the last piece of advice I will give is use the internet. I would use Udemy or Coursera or any of those resources to become proficient in software that is often used. Now, this is a big one. This is probably one of the biggest reasons why I think I got this job. I put on my resume that I had a background using a certain software service called Zendesk. And that was one of the things Zendesk is one of the things that my new company uses. So the fact that I was able to do that really spoke volumes. So for some of you, it may be MailChimp, or maybe for some jobs, it'll be Sprout Social. It may be some kind of CRM like Salesforce, but learn to use that software. You don't have to buy any courses. They help, but if you want to just go on YouTube and do a few hours of it, you can include on your resume, I've got 6.5 hours of training in Sprout Social or on Zendesk or on anything else. So make sure you can demonstrate that you know a little bit of software. And I'm very confident that with these tips, you'll be able to really increase your chances of getting a call back, getting an interview, and getting a job. So I really hope this helps. I know this video was really long. Thank you for hanging in there. I'll be making more videos as time goes on to fill you all in on my journey. And until next time, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be making more videos soon. Bye-bye.